Okay. Good afternoon. On December 10, 2019, our community suffered the loss of a life as a result of lawful police intervention while attempting to arrest an armed and wanted individual. 23-year-old Monte Penning was shot and subsequently died as a result of this incident. As a department and a city, we mourn this loss and offer our sincere condolences to the Penning family. This is obviously a very difficult time for them. We understand that, and they have our thoughts and prayers. Likewise, as a department and a city, we acknowledge the trauma that's also inflicted on our officers who were placed in the untenable position of having to use deadly force to protect themselves and the community we serve. While their actions were legally justified and necessary, they will carry the incident and trauma with them forever. This not only affects the involved officers, but also other law enforcement officers and department members that were at the scene of this incident. Everyone involved, from the Penning family to our department members, is affected by this tragic incident. I would like to personally thank our excellent Beloit community for the support and trust they place with our department on a daily basis, but most importantly during this most tumultuous time. Additionally, I'm grateful for the support and thoughtful input provided by our elected and appointed officials. Following the decision by District Attorney O'Leary earlier today, the department has, for the first time, received the investigative file. The firearm possessed by Mr. Penning has been connected to several other violent firearms crimes that occurred in Beloit in the 30 days leading up to this incident, as noted by the District Attorney. And once we've had an opportunity to fully review the file and fully complete the investigations on those other crimes, we'll be able to report more out to you on that. Just to go over the timeline again and how this incident, what's been going on since then. As we previously described, subsequent to the officer-involved shooting, the Wisconsin Department of Justice, Division of Criminal Investigation, took over the investigation pursuant to state law and our department policy. DOJ DCI, along with Wisconsin Regional Crime Lab personnel, responded expeditiously to the scene and spent significant time investigating this incident to ensure a thorough and complete investigation was conducted and all evidence was tested and evaluated. We thank them for their efforts and commitment in this investigation. On December 19, 2019, I met with a group of community stakeholders here in Beloit to inform them of the statutorily required investigative process and provided information for them to review and pass along to others as the investigation continued. My personal thanks to those individuals for their partnership, objectivity, and restraint. I am well aware that their willingness to meet and understand the process, along with the responsible messaging, was a key piece in alleviating initial community concern. On December 28th, 2020, 49 days after the shooting, DCI completed their investigation and presented that to District Attorney O'Leary. Today, 59 days after the incident, he issued his decision, finding that our officers' use of force was lawful and reasonable, and that they acted in self-defense and within their statutory authority as law enforcement officers. Reviews of this nature place a great burden on our prosecutors as well. We appreciate his thorough and thoughtful review of the matter. Subsequent to this decision, our officers that were involved will be placed back on full duty status. The department will now conduct an administrative review of the incident pursuant to our policy, looking for training and or any substantive policy issues related to the use of force and address them accordingly. This review will be completed in the next several weeks, and we will report out to the community on those findings. Officer-involved shootings, while they rightly receive enhanced scrutiny and community concern, are not commonplace, especially here in Beloit. Our officers successfully resolve conflicts with little or no force required on a daily basis. In 2019 alone, our department responded to 54,479 calls for service, resulting in 3,555 arrests. Use of force was only needed 117 times in all of those calls for service. In over 54,000 calls, that's 0.2%. That is less than 0.5% of all calls for service. Over half of the 117 incidents were nothing more than stabilizing the arrestee, meaning it was simple putting the handcuffs on and stabilizing someone so that they didn't try and flee or get away. So again, relatively no use of force by our members on a regular basis. Additional use of force data is available for public consumption on our website. You can go to the Police Department website and click on Beloit Police Department Police Data Initiative, and you'll see a breakdown by year of our use of force. And then there's a summary for 2019 that categorizes this in a little more detail. Our officers are committed to the values of our organization, most especially respect for the public and the sanctity of life. They do tremendous work and put great effort towards de-escalating violent encounters, many of which could otherwise result in the use of deadly force, but due to their professionalism and restraint are resolved without loss of life or injury. You don't hear about those situations, the almost or the could have incidents. These instances, by their very nature, are unknown to the public, but they happen routinely. Our officers recognize how important it is to sustain community support, as well as my oft-repeated adage, the safety of our officers and the safety of our community are inextricably connected. We keep each other safe and are equally responsible for public safety here in Beloit. As our internal review commences, we ask for that same level of support and understanding. Anyone interested in reviewing the Department of Justice investigation may do so online. The website has been provided. I'm told that after 3 p.m., all the investigative files, photos, video, etc. will be accessible to the public. DOJ is the keeper of all records related to this investigation, and any requests for records of any kind related should be directed to them. The department will not respond to these requests as all responsive records are held by DOJ. As part of our continued effort to educate and inform the public, the department will host additional conversations with the community this year to further discussions regarding police community contacts, such as traffic stops, field interviews, and use of force, situations not unlike the events that led to this unfortunate incident. These conversations are important in eliminating confusion and mistrust as to citizens' rights and the legal parameters of our officers during such contacts. I encourage our community members to attend and participate so that together we can prevent future tragedies from occurring. Once we have a date, we have an open invitation for the Merrill Community Center. Once we have a date and time confirmed, we'll message that out to the public, and we anticipate at that particular meeting to not only cover basic use of force, but also provide an update on our administrative review and the case in general. In closing, please keep the Penning family and our department members in your thoughts and prayers, and we'll keep the community updated as we progress. I'll take some questions.
Chief, could you describe the department's policy on the use of body camera by officers?
Sure. And actually, the body-worn camera policy is on our website under policies and forms. It's policy 424. And I did watch the district attorney's conference, and I know there was a question regarding Detective Adams. So by policy, Detective Adams did not have to have a body camera at that particular juncture. And in fact, what I know about that particular incident, which was not divulged, is because I worked that day, was that Detective Adams and Officer McMahon were actually in training at the range and were on the way back to start their regular tour duty when this incident unfolded. So they weren't actually on patrol, they weren't on regular duty, they were just in transit. So by policy, as a non-uniformed investigator, they have body-worn cameras, but they turn them on when they're necessary. And in this particular instance, I think your other question related to the time frame, I will have to review the investigative file in full, but it is my understanding that Officer McMahon and Detective Adams weren't there at the very beginning, but came into the middle of the incident as the foot chase was unfolding. Therefore, a very precarious situation in which Detective Adams, rather, when he jumped out to assist other officers, did not turn the body cam on. And our policy is very specific on that as well in terms of this here. At no time is a member expected to jeopardize his or her safety in order to activate a portable camera or change the recording media. So, again, what I know about this situation without reading the full file, just to provide proper context, that there's no indication that anything was amiss there, although we will give that a full review. And again, the policy is on our website for your review.
Chief, in that policy, we talked before about body-worn cameras and how they're activated. Sometimes they're activated remotely, specifically when a rifle lock is triggered. Is that not the case for handgun locks?
Yeah, well, actually, you are correct. Our body cameras trigger automatically by the activation of squad lights, the activation of a taser being pulled out, or the siren being activated on the squad. Or, I'm sorry, the taking out of the rifle. So right now, there isn't a device that when you take your gun out of the holster activates your body-worn camera. However, just in the last couple of weeks, we were informed by Axon, the contractor, or rather the manufacturer of our equipment, that they are piloting such a device, and we've already inquired with them to get a couple of those holster-activated body-worn camera devices so that we could try that out. But in this case, we did not have that.
An incident like this puts a tremendous amount of attention on your department. I'm sure there were days that were not easy. How do you lead a department during a time like this and through an incident like this, as chief?
Well, I think leading the department is, we got a lot of great people here that are out there doing the right things for the right reasons. And I think the big part of our success is also not only the competence and the character of our personnel, but the support of our community. And I feel that we've had really strong support from our community. Although this is an extremely tragic incident, it's one that could have been prevented. And that's why we really encourage people to come to these community meetings and have discussions about what should I do in this situation? What shouldn't I do? We don't have to have these tragedies. In this particular case, after watching the District Attorney O'Leary's presentation, really our officers were in a position where they didn't have any other opportunity other than to use deadly force, which is not anything any one of them desires to do. And in fact, looking at Officer McMahon and Detective Adams, they were on training. The reality, they could have just went from training right down to the PD, but because of their dedication to public service and their fellow officers, they jumped in on a situation that was ongoing and found themselves actively involved. So from my perspective, very admirable on their part to do that.
You had mentioned that the firearm that was recovered is linked to a number of gun crimes in Beloit. Do we have any update at this time as to other individuals that Mr. Penny might have associated with, or other arrests, or anything else that might become of this investigation?
There are several open investigations. The firearm that Mr. Penning had is linked to multiple firearms-related incidents in the 30 days leading up to this incident. At this point, we haven't completed the investigation in the district attorney review, and when that's complete, we'd be happy to provide further context and information on that. Right now, those investigations are still open. So aside from knowing that this was an obvious progression of violent crime that was occurring in our city involving this firearm and potentially Mr. Penning and others, we can't provide any further details.
Is the investigation into the stolen vehicle that prompted all of this, is that still an open investigation by the department?
No, it's a closed investigation.
What kind of impact does an incident like this have on the community, and how do you move forward?
Well, I think the biggest thing in terms of community and continuing with their support and understanding is their perception. I don't think it's lost on anyone that there's a large perception in some areas by certain citizens in which they don't really trust the police. And so they feel any time a situation like this occurs, something's amiss, something's afoot. And I think to the extent we can provide additional details, and I think after reviewing this report in total, we'll be able to do that. I know that District Attorney O'Leary provided kind of a summary overview, but again, it leads to more questions, and until we know the details, then we're in a position to answer for you. And so the sooner we can do that, I think that helps with community understanding and not only perception, but now it turns into fact versus what someone thinks occurred. And so there's always that, and I think that's the biggest issue that we have to consider and overcome.
And again, she's just Detective Day, and this wasn't something that was brought up by District Attorney O'Leary. He was also at that training because District Attorney O'Leary said when they responded, Detective Day had a ballistic vest that said police, had his body-worn camera on. Sergeant, the other individual had law enforcement training,
Mm-hmm.
very visible, but he did not have what would be normally associated with an on-shift person.
Right.
But he said Day did have what would normally be associated with being on shift.
Right, I think you're referring to Detective Adams, right?
Detective Adams,
Yeah,
right.
okay. So both of them are firearms instructors. They were both conducting firearms training, and they were riding together. Again, absent, the only piece I know is that they were at the range and that they had left the range to return here to the headquarters to really start their regular tour of duty and their normal assignments. So the fact that Detective Adams had his equipment with him already and Officer McMahon did not is really not a factor in terms of policy or anything else. It's just a set of circumstances that occurred. As I said, they could have chosen to just drive right by the chase and not assist their fellow officers. And again, I think that goes towards their commitment and selflessness as well.
And then, obviously, you have your own investigation, but do you feel like this coming to a close today allows your department to move on in any way and kind of move forward?
Well, as I kind of expressed in my opening comments, the day of, in terms of a department and leadership, we already have to move on because we don't have the opportunity to put the pause button on, give everyone off, and stop responding to calls for service. The very nature of the work that we do requires that 24/7, regardless of whether we were involved in a use of deadly force or one of us gets injured in the course of our duties, we have to come to work and keep on serving the community. So I think that as law enforcement professionals, we understand that as human beings, that still makes it difficult to process and really acquire the mental resiliency to do that and continue to do your job. So I think that's an important piece, and we've obviously worked with our officers to support them in that position. So that's a continual process. These things play out over time. And then really in terms of the community, it's the same thing. It plays out over time and what they see and what they know, and that's why it's really so important that the more information and the more participation that they partake in helps eliminate perceptions that are maybe incorrect, and we get down to facts and real concerns, and then we do some problem solving.
Just a clarification question. I know that so DCI, they still have an open investigation though into those incidents leading up to, because I know they
Right.
Mr. O'Leary asked for if anyone has information regarding those, so.
Yeah, he was referring to, well, I believe he was referring, I shouldn't speak for him. I'm not certain. Well, let me say this. The open investigations are under our purview now. So everything that related, and that's why this got a little bit difficult, is that as the National Integrated Ballistics Information Network, which is where all the casings go and get matched, to find correlations, when they submitted the gun as part of their investigation, it started hitting and correlating with our open shots fired and some other related incidents. So we get notified about that, but there wasn't much we could do because the gun itself was in their custody as part of the officer-involved shooting investigation. So now that that piece is done, we're able to put all those pieces together on these other open investigations. We've been trying to do what we can on them, but they are under our jurisdiction, and we will be the ones presenting charges to the district attorney's office for any other involved parties going forward.
Have any arrests been made in any of those investigations?
Not that I'm aware of.
You guys haven't figured out if anyone else was involved in the stolen car incident leading up to the encounter?
Based on the presentation that I saw District Attorney O'Leary present, and the information I know about the auto theft itself, I don't think there's any indication at all that there was anyone other than Mr. Penning in that vehicle. Okay, thank you very much.